In our previous video, we saw a lot of reasons to doubt that we have any good sort of empirical evidence in the world to think that God is necessarily anything like a human. We get a whole bunch of issues that just make it seem like, well, there's nothing that makes it certain, right? It's not impossible. There's just nothing that makes it certain. And this is, remember, the point that Hume's trying to make, is not that we can be certain that God isn't like us. It's not that we can be certain there isn't a God at all. All he's trying to say is, well, look, we don't have a lot of reason to think that we can be sure about much of anything. We can't be certain. And a lot of what the modern philosophers, especially the folks we're reading, are doing, they're looking for and questioning absolute certainty. So here's a sort of troubling implication of what Philo has said to Cleanthes. We can think of a sort of new version of anthropomorphism. It's not anthropomorphism anymore, because that means making like a human. It's sort of animomorphism, making like an animal. So the universe, we know, could be compared to a body, right? To an animal body or to a human body, so it could still be like a human. We know that things circulate. We know that it moves around. We know that there are lots of things that you might say are digested, right? There are things that are converted from one form to another to gain or release energy. And we know that an animal body must have a soul or a mind, right? So we're going to come back to this sort of conclusion we started to draw with Cleanthes earlier, that maybe God is the universe's mind or its soul. But that would mean that he's probably not the universe's creator or designer. And here's a sort of dilemma. Well, if you deny it because it's not what your religion says, then you're not really an empiricist, right? So you need to find evidence to say that this isn't true. Because Cleanthes, remember, is the empirical one. He wants evidence in the world. He sort of wants God's signature to be on the way the world is. And so he really wants there to be answers to these kind of questions out there to be found by sort of scientific method. And Hume's trying to say, you can't do that, Cleanthes. You can't do it. It's not there. Now, Cleanthes has two complaints. First, he's going to say, well, the universe is like an animal? I don't know about that. It seems like it's more like a vegetable. This goes by sort of fast, and it's not clear why he would make this claim, because this seems like it's even worse for him, right? If the universe is like a vegetable, well, we don't think vegetables need to have souls or minds or anything. So, right, those just sort of grow out of the ground following natural laws. So that seems to imply that maybe we don't need a God necessarily at all. This is actually pretty bad for Cleanthes, so he doesn't stick with this line of argument. The second one is that if God is a soul, that would imply that the world is eternal. Right, and this of course builds in a lot of assumptions about the way souls work. But if we think that your soul is sort of the eternal, timeless, unending part of you, which seems plausible in a Christian worldview, this means that it's existed since before you were born, right, or at least could have, and that after death, it will exist for an infinite amount of time. So he's going to say that if the world is this way, because the world has a soul, the universe has a soul, then why are all these new exciting things still happening, right? And this has to do with the concept of infinity. So if there's been an infinite amount of time for things to happen in, shouldn't everything have happened? At least everything that depends on time would have happened, right? There's no reason to think that oh, there are still things we haven't discovered yet, because yet implies that we haven't had an infinite amount of time to do it so far. So he's going to say, look, it's not that long ago that Columbus went over and quote-unquote discovered the New World. And if the world had been around for an infinite amount of time, that would have been discovered an infinitely long time ago, right? It shouldn't have just happened, and new things shouldn't be happening because there's been an infinite amount of time for them to happen in before. This is a weird argument, and Philo's not really going to buy it. He's going to say, well, eternal just means it's been around for an infinite amount of time, right? It doesn't mean that it was always the same. Right, things could be changing all the time. So he's still going to say, well, Cleanthes still can't defend one God, one sort of Christian anthropomorphized God, over many gods or a soul God or all of these other sort of strange conceptions that we've seen. We're going to go on to Demia's turn. Unfortunately, the passage that we read in the book skips Demia's big argument, which is a version of the cosmological argument, which we've already seen. But we have already seen that one, so we can see Demia give her own argument instead. We're going to leave that for our last video. We'll see Demia's argument and Philo's final response based on the classic problem of evil. So I will see you in our last video.